Welcome to the Funds for NGOs podcast. This is the platform where we spotlight changemakers building better futures worldwide. It's my pleasure today to be joined by Zach Roscos, founder and CEO of EvolveNP, a team that's aiming to create a new recurring funding model for nonprofits using Ethereum blockchain technology. Zach, welcome to the program. We're so pleased to have you with us today.
Yeah, pleased to be here, John.
And for those of us who are not real familiar with blockchain or technology initiatives, can you help us understand what exactly is your team doing and how could it benefit nonprofits?
Yeah, for sure. So at EvolveNP, our goal is and what we provide is recurring fundraising infrastructure built on the Ethereum blockchain, specifically for nonprofits. And our goal is to create a nice natural bridge from all the capital that sits on chain that I'm sure people are aware of, right? A lot of money is involved in that ecosystem. And to create a nice natural bridge to nonprofits that is simple, direct, and not too much labor added for the nonprofits. And so our system is really designed for the nonprofits to be able to access this capital without requiring them to manage any tokens, do anything technically speaking with blockchain technology or even promote the token or promote anything when it comes to this. It's really just trying to make it as simple as possible for nonprofits and their teams to just gain access to a new funding channel.
Excellent, excellent. And help us understand, if you will, how does this differ from traditional fundraising efforts that many of the folks in our audience are engaged in?
Yeah, so really it differs just because the actual community that you're reaching out to or people that you're reaching out to, it's a different community, right? So you're used to reaching out to just normal everyday people. This is tapping into, and our goal is to reach out to the capital that sits on chain, right? This capital traditionally really isn't accessible to nonprofits, or if it is, it's in a very roundabout way, and it makes the nonprofits team have to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to even get access to that. And many people within that community may want to support nonprofits and may want to have a positive impact, but it's really not promoted or it's really not known how to actually do that through kind of Web3 and through this technology. And so our goal is to really make it as simple as possible, that bridge.
Excellent, excellent. So if I'm a nonprofit watching today and I never heard of the term blockchain even, I wouldn't have to be a computer nerd to work with you guys, it sounds like.
No, our goal is to make it simple as possible. We obviously have onboarding calls to kind of help walk through at a very high level of how our infrastructure works, how funds actually get routed, where do they come from. But really at the end of the day, we set it up and have the ability to basically these funds get off ramped and, sent directly to your bank account if you want it that way. Right. And so really the only thing, technically speaking, that you may have to change about a process or add would be the accounting. And we have, workflows and we've set up automated, reporting mechanisms that, try to make that as easy as possible for you guys. So there's no technical expertise that you guys need. There's no kind of, like I mentioned earlier, management of anything, promotion of anything. It's really just trying to give you guys an additional funding source.
Excellent. And so how does that work? If I have a nonprofit, I've got a website, somebody clicks a button to make a donation, would they have the option to go through you, or how do we think about that? Like how exactly does this work in terms of a donation getting from the donor to the nonprofit?
All right. I'm glad you asked. So I feel like you're on the right track, but we aren't a traditional like click to donate and the donation gets sent off. And so what we've done is designed a way that is really organic for the Web3 community to have that impact. And the way that we see that being, the most effective and the most accessible from that community would be in the way of a token. And so our protocol or our infrastructure is designed, it has two main components. We have a mission aligned cohort token and an automated treasury. And so how people support your nonprofit or your mission would really be to buy this token, and a small fee then gets routed on each transaction to this treasury, which then ultimately ends up as a donation that gets routed to you each month.
Got it. So a little bit different than the traditional donation model that has been tried and true, but in some ways is perhaps tired, or there's so many folks now asking for and valid asks for a lot of worthy causes, but it seems like this is a different approach that could truly open up a new channel for folks.
That's exactly it, right? We, especially with AI coming along, everyone kind of has access to the same tools, and it makes it even more accessible for you to blast and promote the traditional methods of fundraising, right? Of crowdsourcing, of, writing grants, applying for grants. This is a new kind of paradigm that leverages this blockchain technology in a way that really, gives you access to, like I said, I might be repeating myself, but gives you access to this capital that traditionally you wouldn't have access to in a very simplistic way for you.
Got it. Got it. And is there a particular type of nonprofit that's best suited for this model, or is it applicable to animal causes, human causes, don'ts for hunger, that sort of thing?
Yep, it's applicable for everyone, right? Starting out, we see the best results, or we are projecting the best results for these smaller to mid-sized nonprofits, because the funds may not immediately be, in the millions, right? You may be receiving, you know, tens of thousands each month, or, less, but that really has an impact on some of these smaller nonprofits, especially if it's monthly coming in. You can plan around it. So really these smaller to mid-sized nonprofits we see as being, us having the most impact on that way. But really we don't discriminate on what, mission that those nonprofits are on. So
Well, it could be great news for the smaller to mid-sized nonprofit that I'm sure are all working hard to secure funds and competing in a lot of ways. Like I said, a lot of worthy causes, but a lot of competition for the dollar.
exactly, right. Especially the smaller to mid-sized, like they don't really have access to these large donors that some of the larger nonprofits have. And really grants are really competitive. And if you're kind of smaller, you know, you don't really have a huge community to really draw on, right? And you may be raising from them, right? But these repeated asks definitely get old, and you can only really do so much of that. So we're just trying to give a new
Absolutely.
option.
Absolutely. It sounds really exciting. Are there any tax implications or any compliance implications when we talk about this new technology and money? Do people need to treat it differently? Is it same tax wise? I mean, is it handled the same as any other donation?
So for our specific infrastructure for supporters, right, people buying the token, it wouldn't be tax deductible because technically you're not directly making a donation, right? You're buying a token that supports this mission, right? And as the infrastructure runs, you are seeing, you know, your impact of buying this token flow through in those monthly donations that get distributed to the nonprofit. But there's no way to trace back how much money specifically you're having on that, right? And so
Got it.
from the supporter's perspective, it's not, our goal really isn't to create a new kind of tax loophole. I guess we feel, and I feel, that if you're kind of about, it's a very strong motivator, right, for donating to nonprofits, but you can do that right through a straight donation. This kind of way is about more so the crowdfunding lane, but it doesn't really require you to give away that money.
Got it. And is there any risk to the nonprofit? For example, if someone purchases a token at $10 and in the open market it rises to $15, but then it crashes down to $8, is their income affected by that change in the net value of the token?
Yeah. So their monthly donations are affected. And so essentially that treasury apparatus that I touched on earlier, where the fee gets routed to, the the funds stay in token form until a monthly automated fundraising event is executed. And that's when those tokens are exchanged into USDC, which is essentially the dollar equivalent. So if I say USDC in the future, it's just the dollar. And so that's when those are exchanged into USDC and then distributed to the nonprofits. And so the nonprofits never receive these tokens. They don't have any kind of affiliation or, direct managerial or transactions they need to make with these tokens, they only receive USDC, but the amount that it would be transferred and transferred into would be less if that crash were to happen.
Got it. So the income could be variable, but it sounds like there's no liability either. In other words, it's not like somebody's going to come back to the nonprofit and say, we gave you money, but now you owe it back.
Correct. That's our goal. Obviously, with digital assets, it's a changing regulatory landscape. But one of our goals and, one of the main things that we've had and been mindful of since inception and since designing this is regulatory compliance. And so that's kind of why we made that clear division of these nonprofits don't manage anything. These nonprofits don't make any decisions about the mechanisms. They don't promote the token. There's a clear kind of separation of, they're just the beneficiaries of this. They just receive these tokens. They don't really do anything with this, they just receive the USDC. They don't really do anything with the token. And so that's our effort to really kind of minimize that risk as much as possible. Obviously,
Excellent.
it's case by case basis. If a nonprofit decides to promote it and, it kind of goes against the SEC guidelines, that's when we get a bit, we can get in a little bit of trouble there. But obviously if you just kind of stick to the status quo and, like I said, no promotion, no management, anything like that, you should be good to go.
Excellent. Excellent. That's great to hear. And you're not advocating that this would totally replace other fundraising or crowdsourcing efforts. It would complement rather than replace their ongoing efforts, correct?
Exactly. Our goal is to be just an additional source of income that really is low labor, right? So our goal is to make it as little as possible, the effort from your team, and to just kind of be that additional funding that you can rely on that will be coming in monthly. And so hopefully leaving your team as much time as possible to continue your normal efforts of fundraising and your normal kind of processes, but just kind of be an additional channel for that.
Excellent. Excellent. Really sounds exciting. Can nonprofits in developing countries participate?
So our goal is to eventually get there very quickly, but to start with, as we're planning to launch at the beginning of September, we want to keep it in-house in the U.S. for nonprofits within the U.S. Just because there are some changing regulatory landscapes as you move on to different kind of regions of the world. We plan to scale pretty quickly and to address those and kind of be able to give access to those nonprofits extremely quickly. But just for simplicity's sake, for starting out, especially with something, this new design, we want to keep it, as limited and as straightforward as possible.
Makes sense. Got it. Got it. But you do plan at some point in time to be more available worldwide.
Correct. Like we plan to make that transition very quickly from, launch, right? We're planning to do that within a quarter or two to really,
Wow. So not too far away.
yeah,
Excellent.
that's our goal post launch. Who knows if it will
Excellent.
turn out right, but that is kind of what our initial roadmap is.
Excellent. Another term you mentioned in addition to blockchain is Ethereum. For folks who are not familiar, can you explain the difference between dollars or other currencies and Ethereum? It's one of the virtual currencies, correct?
Correct. Yes. So Ethereum is, I would like to say, the grandfather of layer ones, which is essentially you have Bitcoin, which is kind of the one that everyone is familiar with, right? But Ethereum really is revolutionary in its own right because the main difference between the two is it adds a programmable layer on top. And so it acts just like currency. You can trade it, you can buy it, hold it. But really what it allows you to do is to add in certain conditions within what we call smart contracts, which is essentially just code that are conditions for a specific kind of, architect or design for a token that allows different conditions to trip automatically and be executed automatically. And so I guess in relation to our own token, right, Ethereum allows us to add in a fee, right? So it allows us to not just trade the token back and forth, but if a condition is met, this fee is then routed over here, right? And Ethereum then allows us to program this treasury to execute automatically every month, right? So no one's manually going in and making these changes and, exchanging this token for USDC and then sending it out. It basically is the programmable layer that allows you to kind of create automations for these tokens.
Got it. Okay. So, as a CEO, you probably talk to a lot of different nonprofits every day. Do you see some trends in the marketplace, or do you have any insights as to where you think fundraising will be in the next few years?
Yeah, for sure. I think, well, at least the ones that I talk to are obviously very interested in blockchain technology. They're very interested in kind of what this even is. A lot of them don't know what this technology even means, right? Like you said, a lot of them just think, this is just adding work, or this is, I don't know, it's too scary, it's new. So a lot of them are just really interested to understand more about what this technology is and how they can kind of use it. Currently, there are existing ways within Web3 that are more similar to traditional kind of methods of fundraising, right? So you have your companies that are giving out grants, crowdfunding, donation matching. Those all exist within Web3. However, they kind of keep the same kind of bottlenecks and, downsides that traditional fundraising actually has, right? It takes a lot of effort to do these things. It takes a lot of, it's discretionary, right? So if you're a company or trying to apply for a grant, there's one grant decision maker, right? Deciding whether your organization is worth a grant. And so a lot of that is still applied to Web3, but really the biggest opportunity I see is that these aren't really Web3 native, right? The most easy to understand thing in crypto is a token, right? Everyone knows how to use one. Everyone understands how it works. And so really we're trying to go back to, the simplest form for everyone, right? For the nonprofits, not trying to manage anything, but for the supporters, really, they just buy a token and they're seeing a real world impact. And so that's kind of where I believe this is going, right? I obviously, I have to believe that this is kind of the way that fundraising is going, especially within this industry, because it isn't really there yet. And it poses so much, upside for basically it.
Potential, a
Yeah.
lot of potential. Excellent. And I have to be the stupid guy and ask you, Web3, what exactly is Web3?
Essentially, that's just the broad category of everything that falls under the blockchain technology umbrella. So
Got it. So like all encompassing. Okay.
exactly, right. So it's kind of encompassing all of those kind of technologies or those companies or projects in kind of one word. So
Got it. Got it. And if I was to contact you and want to move forward with my nonprofit, do you have team members who will help me through the process, through the setup process?
yep. So if you're a nonprofit that's interested, we go through an onboarding. We'll obviously talk to you and talk you through the details of our infrastructure, what it's about, how it actually comes about. But through our onboarding process, we walk you through the entire process of, what's expected of you. We have a nice dashboard set up for you guys that, you'll get access to that lays out everything pretty simply, seeing the expected donation amount, previous donation amount, any accounting reporting things that you may have questions about. We have a dashboard that tracks all that. And so through that onboarding process, we really walk you through and kind of help you through that process of understanding what this is, how you'll actually be able to use it, and what you'll need to know going forward to be able to actually.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So there's somebody who knows what they're doing that will help me.
Yes, and answer all your questions. And once once you become one of our partners, on that dashboard, there's an accessible channel for us to ask us questions at any time because, we know that this is a new technology. We know that this is a new system of fundraising that nonprofits aren't really familiar with. And so we know that there's going to be a lot of questions involved and we're set up we're primed to help you guys.
Excellent. Excellent. And Zach, if I'm interested as a nonprofit, I want to learn more. Do you have resources available?
Yeah. So on our website is probably the best way to find us. It's evolve-np.com. And we have a protocol page on there that basically outlines in detail everything that is to know about our protocol, how it works, diagrams, anything that may be confusing that I've said is answered there. And so it's a nice, helpful page. We also, have an email link there that, you're able to reach out to us and submit a form, and we'd be happy to set up a conversation if anyone has any questions about what we're actually doing and how we're doing it. So
Excellent. Boy, it sounds really exciting. Zach, thanks so much for being with us today. It's been an exciting discussion and an intriguing concept I'm sure will be of interest to all the nonprofits out there.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on, and yeah, I'm excited for what's to come.
We've been speaking with Zach Roscos, founder and CEO of EvolveNP, and you've been watching the Funds for NGOs podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next edition.